Hi everyone, before we get started I would just like to let you know that this video is intended for people who have seen the entire show of Castlevania, seasons 1 to 4, just like me, because I'm going to be talking about it in full spoilerific detail, so if you have not seen the show, please get yourself out of this video, go and watch the show, and come back. It's only, how many hours? Actually, that's one of the things I like about this show. It does not overstay its welcome. Each episode is no longer than half an hour, but sometimes they're like 20 minutes long. And only the last 2 seasons are a full 10 episodes, so... But yes, let's start at the beginning. I, until a couple of days ago, had never played a Castlevania game. But I did love the idea of this series, so I watched the first season when it came out, which was, 3 episodes? 4 episodes, because I felt like watching some proper dark fantasy, gothic, horror, biblical level shit, and it delivered. But as good as those 4 episodes were, I can actually barely remember them, so, great start on the whole talking about the show there, Christian. I did watch seasons 2, 3 and 4 back to back, so don't worry about that. But yeah, basically, I wanted to catch up on some shows that I'd fallen off of, and I thought I would start with Castlevania. And I thought, should I, because I don't remember a huge amount about the show, should I, watch the first 4 episodes again? But I decided not to, because I was worried that I would fall into a rut of, I would rewatch the first 4 episodes, and then I would fall off again, and then repeat the entire process, just like I do with a bunch of fantasy RPG video games. I was going to watch the recap, but I accidentally skipped it. So all I really remember from the first season is it concentrated mostly on Trevor journeying through these villages which had been ravaged by Dracula's hordes, and by the end of the show he's met Cypher and he's discovered Alucard. That's pretty much all I remember about it, sadly. But I do remember that I really enjoyed it at the time. I remember thinking about how it was light on dialogue, and the atmosphere of the show was just kind of quiet in a way. And of course, being the dark fantasy show that it is, it wasn't a particularly cheerful romp. But all the same, I fully expected to come back for season 2 when that came out. To be honest, there have been entire months when I haven't gone to Netflix because I'm not the one paying for it, so I don't worry about making sure I get the most use out of it, if that makes sense. And so when it came up for big Castlevania Season 2 release kind of thing, I probably didn't even notice. Again, it's something I'm trying to get better at. That being said, I think watching the last 3 seasons back to back was probably good. I think watching any show in its entirety, like binging it, is probably the best way to approach that show. And of course, I would also argue that while it's a different experience and maybe not as good, it is also a differently good experience to experience a show releasing each episode weekly, because then you can talk about it with your friends and speculate about where it's going. You've seen Loki. I don't know, actually. Have you seen Loki? Maybe you haven't seen Loki. But you've seen Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad or any other show releasing weekly in its time that was fun to speculate about with friends. But Castlevania is good to binge. Now, the thing I noticed about Season 2 was that it seemed to focus mostly on Dracula and his court. Obviously we got Trevor and Cypher and Alucard, but it felt like the show was more interested in justifying Dracula's perspective and being like, look, we've told you that he wants to kill all of the humans in the world for murdering his wife. He's got a point. Hear him out. And I really enjoyed that. When you're playing with a genre as out there as fantasy, you can go a little bit like that with the villains. You can be like, look, telling someone that you want to kill every single person on Earth is absurd, right? But in this particular world, it's plausible, and so it's fun to kind of entertain that notion. In Dracula himself, all you really have is the grieving, depressed guy who misses his wife, and I absolutely love, I guess I shouldn't have said all you have, because I absolutely love that about him. He's so fed up with it all that ends up being part of his downfall. He doesn't see the betrayal coming because he can't muster the energy to pay attention to the plot that's unfolding beneath him. And I just love the energy he has, where he's like, they're like, you've got to take us here to this town so that we can murder these people because it's strategically important. And he's just like, fine, yeah, okay, whatever, I don't care. As long as you just kill all of the humans, it'll be over. Let it happen. And when you have the people who are going up to him and being like, okay, but talking seriously about this for a moment, what does that mean for us as vampires? Because we can't kill all of our cattle. We need to drink human blood to survive. is this a suicidal thing? Are we like killing ourselves by working with you? And he's just like, it doesn't fucking matter, just leave me alone, just kill everyone. I like that we also bring in two humans to kind of characterize two parts of Dracula in a way. You have Hector, who wants to not necessarily kill all humans, but kind of control them, to kind of like kill a whole bunch of them and then control the rest, because he thinks that humankind is mostly irredeemable but has some redeeming qualities to it. Whereas Isaac, through his experiences in life, doesn't necessarily believe that they should even be allowed to be kept as cattle or kept in pens. He believes that every human, including potentially him, should be wiped off the face of the earth. And when you see some of his backstory, I mean, it's a little bit you're not quite as inclined to agree with him as you are with Dracula, but you can see where he's coming from as well. Like I said, this show does a fantastic job of making you look at the villains and be like, oh, so that's why they want to take over the world and murder everyone. I can get behind that. At the same time, though, this is like some really dark subject matter that they're dealing with, but it never gets like edgy or cringeworthy in any way, because you can imagine a lot of shows that would try and do this would do it in a way where, you know, what's a character who wants to kill everyone on planet Earth look like? Or what do they seem like? You know, it's probably, they would be like, ooh, super dark and brooding and stuff. And yeah, Dracula's dark and brooding, but not in a way that's not in a way that's trying to make him look cool. I think the big twist and surprise in this show, although it's not a surprise by the time you get to it, but you kind of sense leading up to it that it's about to happen, and that's the surprising part, is that Dracula dies at the end of season 2, the middle point of the show, ostensibly what the entire show is about. It ends. And it was a brilliant decision, because it means the rest of the show has this kind of identity crisis of like, well, what now? That's what a lot of the start of season 3 feels like. Most of the characters just picking themselves up, dusting themselves off and going, well, now what? You have Belmont and Cypher falling in love, yes, but also kind of wandering the world, fighting monsters, and eventually starting to grow a little bit bored. You have Alucard faced with the very real trauma of the fact that he's just killed his dad and now he's living in his house and he's alone. That scene, by the way, at the end of season 2 when Alucard is crying, like the very last scene of season 2 before the credits, is horrible, because it's a really accurate depiction of what it's a really accurate depiction of what uncontrollable grief could look like. And like, you felt that when you saw that, right? The show does keep up the theme of giving the villains a nice spotlight by following Isaac and Hector and seeing where they go on their respective stories, and they do end up being important towards the end. But when you think about it, Isaac, Hector and Camilla, their kind of plot all wraps up by the end, and the only way that it has any bearing on the main story of the other folks is that Hector provided some assistance to Saint Germain to open up the Infinite Corridor. That's it. Like, it's just kind of a mention. So the A plot and the B plots didn't really line up by the end of a show, but I think it's okay, because, you know, they're telling stories of their own. But it's not something that could really fit into its own show. It's not something that would make sense outside of this show. And it didn't feel like filler either. But I kind of jumped ahead to season 4 there a little bit. I do love that Hector, the soul forger dude, who has a knack for finding broken little puppies and stuff, and has this caring streak in him for, you know, caring about weak and broken things and wanting to help them in the most warped, twisted way possible, meets up with Lenore, who is a vampire who specializes in diplomacy in their warfare efforts, and seems to have a penchant for the weak little human in the basement. You know, I phrased that awfully, but you know what I mean. I think they're made for each other, and as twisted as their relationship is in many ways, there is a genuine love which kind of grows between them in a way. Or if not a love, then maybe like a mutual respect and a friendship by the end. I don't know. I just find it interesting that those characters have a lot more in common than anyone ever seemed to realize. You could say that she is in effect forging his soul to be an assistant to their cause, much like he forges the souls of the dead. I mean, there's so many directions you can take this. Looking at all of the characters in this show, you could like do videos about all of them, about the characterization on offer, but I'm not doing that. I'm just kind of giving you my general reactions. Isaac's journey through season 3 was really interesting to watch. I really enjoyed, for instance, his his scene with the boatman where he was like, oh, the boatman, the sailor, where he was like, oh, I'm gonna kill you and steal your boat, and the sailor's just like, well, you could, but you wouldn't be able to sail it alone. And he's like, okay, well then you're gonna sail me where I need to go. And he's like, I could, but you're gonna have to pay me. And he's like, why would I pay you? I could just kill you when you've done sailing me there, because people are awful. And he's like, okay, but people are awful because you don't pay them, maybe? And this guy challenges Isaac's worldview in a lot of interesting ways, and it turns out that the thing Isaac really needed to kind of help him realise that not all people are shit is to talk to some people who aren't shit. And he did that in this season. The show eloquates it far greater than I ever could, and obviously I already told you at the top of the video, but if you're watching this video without having seen the show, then you are doing yourself a tremendous disservice. But yeah, I think the coolest thing about season 3 was Saint-Germain and the Infinite Corridor, because it really opens up this world to be explored in future particular shows if they're going to spin them off. Apparently there is a spin-off coming, I don't know anything about it yet. But the Infinite Corridor, I think that's what it's called, is described as being a pathway to other worlds, and in one you see a spaceship take off, in another you see a giant mech walking around. These were not things I expected to encounter during my viewing of Castlevania, but that's that. Although I was looking up Castlevania games the other day, and it did seem like one of them is set in the near future and has stuff like that in it, but that's not what this was showing. I love the idea that this is in the 1400s, but 1400s Earth and Hell are both real places that exist in this much larger universe of other planets and places, and it's just super cool. Like, you don't necessarily go there or visit those places, but I mean, for the most part you don't anyway, but the fact that they're there is just cool to know about. It's a little bit like World of Warcraft in that way, although in WoW you definitely do go to some of those places eventually. I like it when fantasy and sci-fi mix, what can I say? The show obviously goes heavy on the overtones of Catholicism and religion and demons and hell and death and all that kind of a thing. And when I saw the Infinite Corridor, my mind did get ahead of me a little bit, and I was hoping that season 4 might take the turn to have Trevor, Alucard and Cypher take the fight to hell and to heaven, because there's a scene where Isaac's talking to one of his night creatures who can talk back, and the night creature is talking about how the night creature doesn't say it, but you get the sense that there was some injustice at play here, because the night creature was trying to spread the word of a religion that wasn't, necessarily the correct religion, and so he got sent to hell, which is a very Catholic seeming thing. And Isaac seemed troubled by this, or at least he did in my reading of the show, and I took that to mean that maybe, Isaac might team up with some of our protagonists and take the fight to hell and rip down the structure of, gods and demons and all of that, but maybe that's getting a bit too ahead of myself. We did get death in the form of Varney, but we'll get back to that. So yeah, season 3 ended very bleakly, with a whole bunch of souls getting sacrificed to open a gateway to hell to get a bunch of night creatures to kill a bunch more people. That was Trevor's storyline. I did like the quote where he was saying, for the last few weeks it's been nothing but victories, and we've been living your life, and now we're living my life. I haven't talked too much about the protagonists, but they were fantastic. This show knew that as action heavy as it will be, as gory and dark and messed up as it will be in places, it needs a little bit of humour to balance it out, so that it doesn't just become super depressing or super edgy, and the banter between Trevor, Cypher and Alucard definitely delivered on those fronts. But yes, season 4, the one I just watched in the last day or two. Oh, hang on a minute, we didn't talk about Alucard's messed up plotline from season 3. So at the end of season 2, I said to my friend Reese, who has also seen the show, hey, please tell me that season 3 Alucard isn't just more of him crying and sobbing and being uncontrollably sad. And he said, no, there's more to it than that. He's not just sad the entire time, don't worry about that. And I went, yay. I wish... No, I don't wish he'd told me what was going to happen. I don't wish he'd given me some warning, but my god. Alucard at the end of season 3 is in a much worse state than Alucard at the end of season 2. Those vampire hunters who meet up with him and then try to get him to teach them things quickly become jealous of the knowledge that he is seemingly hoarding from them, and in a pretty messed up way seduce him and then try to murder him, which, At that point he's probably thinking maybe Dad did have a point, and not necessarily just a point that I shoved through his heart. Heyo! But yeah, beginning of season 4 Alucard is very much beginning of season 1 Trevor Belmont in a very fun kind of a roundabout way, which he makes jokes of a couple of times. But nonetheless, he never goes the full Dracula route. He is the anti-Dracula after all, and he journeys out of his way to save a town which cries to him for help, in form of a dead man on a horse. Meanwhile, Trevor and Cypher go to the city of somewhere, whose name I've forgotten, which is apparently the first place that Dracula attacked, and finds an underground royalist scheme where the last royalist has gone insane and is making everyone worship the dead king and the queen, and all of that fun stuff. And there, Trevor finds several useful, important vampire hunting items, because I'm assuming the writers of the show went, shit, we forgot to give him his gear. There's only a few episodes left. Throw it all in the vault. Like, come on, Trevor Belmont finds the dagger he specifically needs to kill Death, and he finds it on the random body of a person who was in a barn. Sure, it's plausible given the setting of a wider city, but also it feels slightly transparent, like maybe dot a few of those around, throughout the entire show. That does lead me into something I've yet to talk about though, and that's the action sequences. The action sequences are so fucking good. They are so good. They are some of the best animated fights I've ever seen. Go watch them if you haven't already. My favourite thing about the characters is that they level up. They gain new abilities. Like, they never just fall back on the old reliables. And I think that's the benefit of this being a show which is limited in story length and not like an ongoing anime such as Naruto, where one of the characters might use pretty much the same moves for up to 100 episodes in a row. Bleach is a little bit more guilty of doing that than Naruto is, to be fair. But here you see Cypher learn how to use lightning, and then by season 4 she's using lightning more often and in more varied ways. Belmont kind of levels up by gaining new weapons, like he gets a better whip which can explode, and then he dual wields the whips at the end of season 3 to kind of like level up his fighting style that way, and then in season 4 he gets a variety of new weapons which he uses in fights. Alucard decides, fuck it, I'm going to start using a shield, why the hell not, so he uses that. It's really cool, and I don't know if it's because it has its origins in video games, and I don't know if it's representative of the gameplay upgrades within those games. I've only really dabbled in the very first game for a little bit so far, but I love it. I love how, if that is what that is, it represents onto the screen, and how it changes up the fighting animation sequences. It's great. I will say though, one of my favourite fighting sequences is in season 2, when Trevor loses his whip for a minute, and he goes up against this bird-like night creature in the library beneath his house, and he wraps his legs around the creature's staff-like thing, breaks it in two, he like thrust kicks the dude, breaks the thing in two, grabs both ends of the sticks, and then just starts whacking on the bird thing over and over again. It's amazing. I also like how the show isn't too fussed around kind of power levels. Like, nothing's too easy. They never like out-level, and I know I'm using video game terms here, but you know what I mean. He never like out-levels a basic night creature. If he's going up against just one night creature, that one night creature is going to provide a little bit of a fight at least. If he's going up against 5 night creatures, they're not all 5 going to be as powerful as that one he faced, but it doesn't matter. It's rule of cool. The only time I've really noticed this change has been like the big bads at the end of series, like Dracula or Carmilla or Death. Now listen, I'm a sucker for a personified death, but this one seemed a bit like, I don't know, I feel like it could have been done with more grandeur, but at the same time, that's not really what the show is about. It's revealed that Varney, this British vampire who shows up in season 4 and insists he's been there all along, is actually Death masquerading as a vampire. But when he turns into Death, he retains his kind of Cockney attitude. Like, I think one of the things he says to Trevor Belmont is, I was put here on Earth at the dawn of time to eat your fucking souls, like stuff like that. And again, I'm not necessarily complaining here because the show's not edgy, and that's something I praised it for beforehand. But I guess I don't know what I'm saying. But the final fight, oh, it was fucking intense. It was so cool. I loved it. I watched the finale about 20 minutes ago, and you'll notice this video is almost 20 minutes long. About 20 minutes ago. And I have to say, I did not expect, out of all of the possible shows for me to watch, I did not expect gritty ass, maybe not gritty, gory ass, gothic ass, I'm saying ass a lot. I did not expect Castlevania, out of all the shows that I could watch, to be the one with a happy ending. Trevor survives, Cypher's pregnant, Alucard's building a village around their place, and they're all going to live together, and it's going to be great. Isaac gets kind of semi-redeemed, Hector frees himself of his bonds, Lenore does perish, but I said Lenore, but I realised she did not have a happy ending. But even then, it wasn't like overly sad in a way. She was just kind of like, yeah, I'm out. See ya. Peace. The two gay vampire ladies, who I haven't even talked about yet, who were also in Carmilla's court, they kind of decided to go off and make a life together instead of trying to conquer the world, which was nice to see. By the way, speaking of action scenes, when Big Vampire Lady, whose name I'm forgetting right now, dons her day armor and takes the fight to the helpless farmers who are attacking her group of vampires. My god, that was a fight. That didn't need to be fully animated, it didn't need to be that much of a big deal, it didn't need to be so graphic, but I'm glad it was. Again, this is a show that points at the villains and goes, look how terrible they are, don't you just love it? And I do. There are lots of shows out there that make me flinch every time an innocent person gets killed. This was not one of those shows. So yeah, I know I've kind of skipped over certain plot points, haven't discussed every single thing that's happened to every character on this show, but I'm trying to be less overly comprehensive with these thoughts on videos now. I just kind of want to talk about the stuff that stood out to me. That's why I'm doing all 4 seasons at once here instead of just, season 1 and season 2 and so on. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this. Let me know what you thought about the show. I think my love for it kind of shone through in this video. Again, kind of a ramble more than a cohesive thought presentation, but it's just so good, and it had a happy ending, and it was so refreshing to have a happy ending, especially in a genre like this. I really enjoyed it. So I'm gonna go and find out what that spin-off show is about now, and hopefully it doesn't end up causing the deaths of all of the characters that I just learned to love, who are having happy endings right now. Thank you very much for watching this video. Again, let me know what you thought, and I will see you in the next one.